BookTube, we are back. Let's go over my top 10 books of 2024. Before we get into the books, this year for reading has been absolutely incredible, and 2024 has also been incredible for this channel. We started this channel in July of this year, and we have grown to 23,000. And I love each and every one of you who subscribe, who like, who comment, who share your love for reading with me. Like, absolutely insane. Just insane. And we're going to celebrate with some confetti at the end for sure. So these books are the top 10 books I've read this year so far. There are some rules around these books. The rules are I can't do more than one in a series. I've read a lot of series this year. And that rule is just because a lot of these books there would be a lot of books in the series that make this list for sure. So I have to pick the best book from that series for these books here. So again, there are some great books in all these series. But I have to only pick one just so we can have more books that make it to this list. That was hard in itself, but we're going to do it here. Like I said, what were your top 10 books from this year? But here are mine. All right, coming in at number 10, we have Chain Gang All-Stars. Chain Gang All-Stars. It's just wow. Like, absolutely incredible. So in this story, you follow a couple main characters who commit some heinous crimes, and in this dystopian thing, they get sentenced to prison, and they get sentenced to jail, mostly life sentences. Some of them are even on death row, but they can actually fight for their freedom in this CAPE program. And by fighting for their freedom, that's what I literally mean. They fight for their freedom, gladiator style, and they go against other inmates. And the more battles they win, the higher probability, higher chance that they'll be able to get released into the public. Like, how insane is that? But what's even more insane about this story is that this is televised on national TV. You can turn on ESPN, you can turn on NBC, you can turn on ABC, you can watch it after NBA Finals, you can watch it after the Super Bowl. You can watch this on TV, and you can support some of these people who've done the most heinous things of all time. Absolutely insane. The writing in this one was perfect. The characters in this one was perfect. And this one was number 10 for me, for sure. Coming in at number 9, we have The Lost Metal. And I really want to put the entire Era 2 on this list, for sure. Era 2 is normally called the Wax and Wayne series. It's Mistborn Era 2. If you're familiar with Mistborn Era 1, top tier for sure from Brandon Sanderson. But now I'm coming on here to officially say that I enjoyed Mistborn Era 2 over Mistborn Era 1. Now, I got to do a reread of all of it. But as of right now, Mistborn Era 2 for me is top tier. In this one, you follow Wax and Wayne 300 years after the initial story of Mistborn Era 1. More technology advances. It's set in kind of Western type style, which again, I'm not really a Western guy. I'm just going to be completely honest with you, but I was so enamored with this story. These characters are, I think, much better than Era 1 characters. The character development throughout this entire series is amazing, but once you get to The Lost Metal, this is where it peaks. This is where it peaks, and I was pretty sad throughout this book because I did not want to get out of this world, right? Because again, Mistborn Era 2, it has an ending, and it was just so incredible for me. And The Lost Metal just embodied why I think Era 2 is better than Era 1, but we got to do a comparison at some point for sure. But number 9, Lost Metal, Era 2 for sure. Coming in at number 8, we have the 5th season, which is the first book in the Broken Earth trilogy. And this one, I read this early in January of this year, and let me tell you, one of my favorite reads still to this day. And sometimes you fall into recency bias and forget about books. I haven't forgotten about the 5th season. I have not. In this one, you follow 3 points of view as they go through this climatic world that has so much like stress on the earth. That there's 5 seasons, and the 5th season is always a cataclysmic event that happens. This has some of the best magical systems. This has some of the best character works. This has so many twists and turns in this story. This sci-fi is one of my favorite. I'm going to continue the series for sure. But this one right here, just so good. And it made it to number 8 spot, 100%. Coming in at number 7, we have Morningstar. And Morningstar is the 3rd book in the Red Rising series. So when it comes to Red Rising, I have a super interesting relationship with Red Rising. So I read the first book in January, and I was like, okay, this is just good. This is okay. But there's a lot of people who follow me on Book Talk, who even follow me on here probably. Just let me know, like, just stick with it. Just read Golden Sun. Like, it gets so much better. It gets so much better. And I'm like, oh, well, I might as well try it. Golden Sun was absolutely amazing. Like, complete 180 from what was written in book 1. And I'm like, all right, this has to be peak. Nothing gets better than Golden Sun. Morningstar? Morningstar. Crazy. So this story follows Darrow as he starts his life as a lower class, kind of like citizen. From there, some tragedy happens, and he fights his way to become the top of the top. He fights his way to become a gold, and it's across a universe, it's space, it's all types of stuff that's involved in this story. But just when you get to Morningstar, all that stuff is kind of like background. It's really the characters who you're just striving for, you're rooting for. One of my favorite characters, Severo, from this series. Just, oh my gosh. Morningstar for me is the reason why I'm continuing this series, because again, if we continue to have peak like that, I am ready and willing to do that. It's taken me a while to get back to it. I will be starting it in January, the second half of the series, but Morningstar for sure, just the drama, the trauma, just it's like I remember where I was when I read that part. Not gonna say what the part is. I'm not gonna spoil it, but just know that there's something in there where you will end up putting the book down and just not be okay. But Morningstar itself was more than okay. More than okay. And it definitely has a number 7 spot for sure. Coming in at number 6, we have Dungeon Crawler Carl. Now, this was probably one of my most surprising reads of the year. And let me tell you, one of the funniest books you'll ever read in your entire life. I read this, last month? And I cannot wait to get through how many books are in the series? 7, 8, 9, 10. I also need to listen to it on audio. Can't wait for that. But in terms of Dungeon Crawler Carl, so in this story, you follow the character Carl as he all of a sudden randomly steps outside of his apartment, and the world's ending. It's an alien invasion, and all of a sudden, the millions of people that are left on planet Earth, they're ushered into these dungeons. In these dungeons, they kind of fight for their life. They go through level, and like I said, it's some of the funniest pieces of work you'll ever read. And I always say this: it's super hard to make somebody laugh when it comes to reading. You can make somebody cry, you can always make somebody happy, but to actually make somebody laugh out loud, like I was in the airport laughing out loud at this story. And I cannot wait to continue, this series. And people say it gets better. People say the audiobook is better. We're going to see. But Dungeon Crawler Carl, number 6 for sure. Coming in at number 5, we have The Hunger of the Gods. The Hunger of the Gods is the second book in the Bloodsworn trilogy. The first book is The Shadow of the Gods. Second book is The Hunger of the Gods. Last book is The Fury of the Gods. The Shadow of the Gods I thought was a pretty decent book. It's a Norse-inspired fantasy that follows different points of view. There's so much that's involved in this story. There's magic. There's dragons. There's different creatures from that perspective. There's our dead gods. There's kidnapped children. There's so much in there, and they race and they go against these gods, these ancient gods, these dead gods. And that's the first book, and then the second book, peak for me. Like I let me tell you, this deserves a number 5 spot. It was almost higher because I was thrown off guard just by how the author from the first book just absolutely crushes it with the second book. He even adds more points of view to it, which again, sometimes authors mess that up because they're doing too much. Not John Gwynne. He did not mess that up. Not messed it up at all. So number 5, The Hunger of the Gods. I need to read more of John Gwynne's work. Like that's what this is coming down to. I need to read more of John Gwynne's work. But it deserves number 5 spot for sure. Coming in at number 4, Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wong. M.L. Wong, out of nowhere, is becoming one of my favorite authors of all time. She wrote The Sword of Kaigen, which I adore so much. Tragic story, but such a great story. And I wasn't expecting much coming into Blood Over Brighthaven because that book was peak. And I'm like, again, there's no way you can do it again. Right? There's no way you can have a banger after banger after banger after banger. Like, there's only certain authors who I think can do that. And I'm like, Emma Wong, really? Could she do that? She did it. She did it. My goodness. Emma Wong, like, I don't know what she puts in these books. Just know it is insane. So in this one, you follow a woman who is striving to become a high mage in an industry that's dominated by men in this town that she lives in. And while she's striving to become that, she has an assistant, and her assistant, kind of helps her become that. But they also peel back the layer of what magic really is. And let me tell you, it's insane. I'm not going to go too far into what it is. Just know that you are going to not only question the main character's motives, but you'll be feeling the feels. in this story, while also having some of the most interesting magical systems that I've ever come across. Explained so well. Character work so well done. Like, you're going to be completely enamored by this story, and this deserves a number 4 spot. Caught me off guard. This is the first book I read in my book club, actually, and highly rated. The only book that kind of beat this book, at least from the book club's perspective, was The Hunger of the Gods. But this one here is just absolutely amazing, and definitely check it out. I know it got re-released in October of this year. Just top tier for sure. Coming to number 3, we have The Rage of Dragons. The Rage of Dragons, still, for me to this day, is one of my favorite books of all time. Like, when I picked this up, I wasn't expecting much. I'm just being completely honest with you. First off, I'm a lukewarm dragon fan, and just no spoilers at all, but like, there's not a lot of dragons in this one anyway. But again, I saw dragons, I'm like, I guess I'll try it. Caught off guard. And one of my favorite, not only characters of all time, Evan Winter is now one of my favorite authors of all time. And as some of you know, I did an interview with him, which for me, maybe for him, it was just like another person that he talked to about, his stories. For me, like, to be able to, talk to him about one of my favorite books from this year, insane. So the story follows main character Tao, as he comes from way lesser beginnings. He comes from so much tragedy. And all of a sudden, he's like, Mamba mentality. I have to figure my way through this world and go on the absolutely most insane revenge tour, blinders on. This African-inspired fantasy has some of the best magical systems that you'll ever come across. It also has writing that I think is just too top tier for this not to be on everybody's list once you read it. Like, I know some of you come to me and say, oh, I read Rage of Dragons, top tier. Like, I think more people should do that. More people should read Rage of Dragons just to experience what we experience. If I could read this book again for the first time, this is probably the number 1 book I'd read again for the first time, over and over again. And I'm excited for book 3 of this series to come out, hopefully in 2025, because I need to get back in with Tao. The Fire's Vengeance was great too, but the Rage of Dragons, chef's kiss for sure. Coming in at number 2, we're down to the final 2. Has to go to Demon in White, the 3rd book in the Sun Eater series by Christopher Rocchio. So I go into a year and I'm like, all right, I want to read this series, I want to read that series. I try to get to the series that I want to get to. When it came to Sun Eater series, I actually didn't hear about it until I got on Book Talk and I saw some mutuals talk about, like Elizabeth, Jonah, Izzy. They were talking very highly of this series. I'm like, I've never heard this series before. I read Empire of Silence. I'm like, okay, I like this because, again, it's a slower burn, and I'm all about slow burns. Like, I'm down for the ride. I read that. I'm like, all right, let's go to book 2. If book 2 is the same thing, like, I don't know if I'll be able to continue this series. Book 2, insane. And I thought that was one of the best books I've ever read. And then you get to Demon in White. And after Howling Dark, I'm like, it can't get any better than this. Let me tell you, Demon in White is probably one of the best sci-fi space opera books of all time. Like, I will stand on that. And I hope people continue to read this series and, like, challenge me on that. I know some people say Kings of Death is probably better than Demon in White, which Kings of Death is the 4th book in the series. I can see it. Just know Sun Eater is probably one of the best sci-fi space operas you'll ever read in your entire life. So in terms of this story here, you follow the main character, Hadrian Marlowe, as he navigates the universe. And he actually doesn't come from lesser beginnings, which a lot of the sci-fi space opera, even stories itself, you have somebody who's coming from, like, poverty, from nothing. This guy actually comes from, like, a major house in terms of, like, the universe. Like, he actually comes from wealth. And he's like, I want to find my own purpose. So he traverses throughout the entire universe. And he ends up, like, kind of finding his purpose, kind of not. Just know that he ends up facing some of the most brutal antagonists that you'll ever come across. And this is also written from the first person point of view. I highly recommend you do the audiobook, but you do an immersion read with this, because it's just top tier. And at number 2, it was fighting night and day with number 1, but I still have dreams about this series. I'm Called to Ashes of Man. I just have to read the Squad Gods. I'm just gonna let y'all know it gets better, but it also gets worse. And by worse, I mean emotionally, you gotta ready yourself. you have to ready yourself for this series, because don't just expect some just like Star Wars, like, no, you got to ready yourself for this series, because you'll get caught off guard and you'll be in the airport at whatever time trying to hold back the thug tears. Series top tier, but Demon in White, number 2 book from this year. All right, coming at number 1, I'm not going to be a suspenseful. You should all know what number 1 is going to be. Number 1 is Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson, the second book in the Stormlight Archive. Words of Radiance. Words of Radiance. So, Words of Radiance, you read Words of Radiance after Way of Kings. And Way of Kings, 1,300 pages. Great story. Obviously, great build up to, what the entire Stormlight Archive is. But in reality, it's a 1,300 page prologue, right? Like, that's what you're going through. You're going through a lot of backstory when it comes to the Way of Kings. And I enjoyed Way of Kings a lot. I still thought it was like a 5-star. So I got Words of Radiance. I'm like, please don't be more of the same. Like, I need some action. I got what I wanted. Non-stop action. From page 1 to the end. Non-stop. You couldn't hold your breath at all. Absolutely insane. The Stormlight Archive is Brandon Sanderson's high epic fantasy. A lot of people ask me, how do I describe this? Like, what is this story about? Honestly, I can't really describe it. Just know it's gas. Just know it's gas. And then Words of Radiance, like I said, the pace picks up. The battle scenes in Way of Kings were great. In this one, it goes absolutely insane. The writing in this one is amazing. And you get some quotes from this story that's absolutely nuts. And in this one, you actually also figure out who the actual enemy is. And if you know, you know. Words of Radiance, just I was completely caught off guard by how enthralled in this story I was, how much sleep I lost for this story. This book is a little bit longer than The Way of Kings. It's like 1,400 pages, maybe, kinda. It took me a week and a day to finish this book. Like, you have no clue how much I enjoyed this book. I mean, you probably do. If you follow me, I probably talk about this book a lot. But this is number 1 book this year, and I'm going to say it, number 1 book of all time. Until something comes up and do that. I'm still chasing that feeling from Words of Radiance. So number 1 book for sure. All right. Like I said, confetti time. This year has been just amazing. And I've been a reader for a long time, and I don't think you all understand just how much I enjoy reading, but also how much I enjoy just seeing all you read and enjoy talking to you about some fire books. Next year is going to be even bigger, even better. We're going to read some better books. We're going to read more. We're going to do a whole bunch of different things with this channel, with just me in general, and I'm super excited for that. But none of this happens without all of you. None of this happens without all your support, all your love. Even sometimes when we don't agree on things, I love that conversation too as well. And I'm gonna continue to be as genuine as possible for you all. And I want you all to do the same thing for me. Like, if you're like, oh, like, I don't agree with that, I want to know that. I want to know, so we continue to have these conversations, because again, this is what really, really drives me, and this is my passion. So I did promise you confetti. I normally do this on Book Talk, and this makes a huge mess. I hope this is recording right now, because if not, this is only 1 take. So everyone, I hope you have a great rest of the year. 2025 is going to be amazing. And as always, everyone, happy reading.